My ex-wife cheated on me with my brother, who has always been my parents' golden child, and even had his baby. Now, my family, who always hated me, is begging for money because I recently got promoted. I'm 29, and 2 months ago, I divorced my wife, 27. She had been cheating on me with my estranged brother, also 27, for some time. 4 months ago, she told me she was pregnant. At first, she tried to convince me the baby was mine, but my brother's frequent visits made me suspicious. I decided to check her phone, and when I confronted her with what I found, she admitted to the affair because she had no other choice. My family and I have been distant ever since I left home at 18. They always treated me like an outsider, while my brother was a favorite. The breaking point for me was when I achieved something important, getting accepted into college, and they threw a party for my brother instead, saying they didn't want him to feel left out. They even told me I should uplift him rather than throw a tantrum. That day, I decided never to return home, and I stuck to it. I worked my way through college by taking loans and working, then shared a small apartment with a friend. I never spoke to my parents after moving out, and they never tried to reach out to me either. Years passed. Last year, my brother messaged me online, saying my parents missed me and wanted to reconnect. A lot had happened since I left home. I'd gotten married 2 years ago and was living a comfortable life. Although I hadn't truly moved on from the pain caused by my family, I decided to meet them. At first, it was awkward and uncomfortable, but they seemed to be trying to make up for the past, so I felt obligated to try as well. I even invited them to my home, which turned out to be a huge mistake. That's where my brother met my wife. They began an affair, and she got pregnant. When she told me she was pregnant, I was thrilled, thinking the baby was mine. But over time, my brother's behavior raised red flags. He started visiting more often, touching my wife's belly, and talking to the baby. When I confronted my wife about it, she dismissed it as nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. 6 months into her pregnancy, I checked her phone while she was asleep. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The text between her and my brother revealed that the baby was his, not mine. They had been seeing each other for a while and planned to wait until after the baby was born to tell me. Their plan was for her to divorce me, marry my brother, and live off the child support I'd have to pay. The next morning, I confronted her about the messages. She denied it at first, but eventually confessed. That was the end of our 2-year marriage. As expected, my family sided with my brother and my ex-wife. All their promises about treating me equally were empty. When my ex and brother announced our divorce and their relationship on social media, my family fully supported them. Ignoring the betrayal I endured when my ex-wife decided to marry my brother, my entire family fully supported their decision. Nobody cared about how much it hurt me or how they had destroyed my mental health and trust. My ex had lied to me for 6 months, pretending the baby was mine. So it felt like I lost not only my wife, but also the child I thought was mine. It was devastating. My parents told me this was for the best and refused to acknowledge that my brother had done anything wrong. They even suggested I should be happy that my ex and brother had found happiness and urged me to celebrate with them. That was the final straw. I cut them out of my life for good. The divorce was messy. My ex-wife walked away with a huge settlement and my car because my family sided with her during the divorce. Since she was now with my brother, they fully supported her lies. She and her lawyer created a story that I was toxic, controlling, and had forced her to quit her job, even though that was her own choice. My family backed up her claims, adding that they had cut me off years ago because of my supposed misogynistic attitude and temper tantrums. The evidence was stacked against me, and I ended up losing a lot of money in the divorce. Thankfully, I was able to keep the house. When the divorce was finalized, I was just relieved it was over. Where I live, there's no waiting period for divorce, and since my ex didn't contest it, I was able to wrap everything up quickly. I focused on moving on with my life, even though it was difficult to forget everything that had happened. I buried myself in work, determined to become a better version of myself. That hard work paid off because 2 weeks ago, I got promoted. I now had a better position, a higher salary, and a new company car. Feeling proud of myself, I decided to treat myself to dinner at one of my favorite restaurants. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of posting about it online. A day or two later, my mother reached out and asked me to visit them. I was confused since we hadn't spoken since the divorce, and they had supported my ex in her lies. I ignored her messages, but she started calling me nonstop. When that didn't work, she showed up at my office, causing a scene by arguing with the receptionist. It was embarrassing, so I promised to visit them in a few days just to get her to leave. When I finally visited, I noticed they had used the settlement money to move into a bigger house to accommodate the baby, who had been born just a few weeks earlier. I assumed the alimony I was paying was also helping with the bills, but I didn't really care since it was a small part of my salary, and I could afford it. My brother wasn't home, and my ex was asleep, so it was just me and my parents. I didn't bother with small talk and waited for them to explain why they wanted to see me. After a few minutes of awkward silence, my father finally admitted that my brother had been fired from his job. The settlement and alimony money weren't enough to cover their expenses anymore. They had seen my post about my promotion and wanted me to help them financially. They were running out of money. My parents had retired years ago. My brother was unemployed, and my ex clearly wasn't planning to go back to work anytime soon. The alimony I was paying wasn't enough to cover the expenses for a family of 5, especially with a newborn in the house. I understood their situation, but I was shocked that they even had the audacity to ask me for help after everything they'd done to me. I was so stunned that I didn't say anything for a few minutes. When I finally snapped out of it, I realized I didn't owe them anything, not even a conversation. So I stood up, walked to the door, and left without saying a word. When I opened the door, I saw my brother standing outside. My parents were calling after me, begging me to stay and listen, and my brother looked startled to see me. I still didn't respond and kept walking toward my car, which was parked just outside their lawn. It was pouring rain, and by the time I reached my car, I was completely soaked. I was already in a terrible mood, and then my parents and brother came running after me, pleading with me one last time. As I fumbled to find my car keys in my pocket, my brother decided to speak up. I'm not going to lie. It felt pretty satisfying to finally stand up for myself after the way they had mistreated me my entire life. But now, 2 days later, I'm starting to feel conflicted. My mother has been texting me nonstop, and I feel guilty for not helping them. I know I'm in a good financial position, and sending them some money wouldn't really hurt me, but after everything they've done, it feels like I'm being used. I can't decide if I'm wrong for refusing to help them after they took my ex's side during the divorce. I decided not to help them. It was a tough choice since I felt incredibly guilty about turning my back on them. But then I reminded myself, they had no problem abandoning me my entire life. Even during the divorce, they betrayed me by siding with my ex. So why should I feel guilty for doing the same to them? I told my mother to stop harassing me, or I'd get my lawyers involved and it wouldn't end well for them. That, of course, made them angry. A few days later, my brother showed up at my house to talk to me. He said he felt bad about how I was treated growing up, but he couldn't help the fact that he was just better than me, which is why our parents treated him differently. He also said I should stop holding grudges and acting childish, and instead help our parents out since they were going through a tough time, because, according to him, that's what normal kids would do. I couldn't help but laugh at how absurd he sounded. I told him that instead of trying to manipulate me and put me down, he should be out looking for a job instead of wasting time like this. That clearly struck a nerve with him. I think he got frustrated and started yelling at me, saying I was just jealous that not only our parents, but even my ex-wife preferred him over me. He claimed I was taking revenge by refusing to give them money. I didn't even bother arguing and just agreed with him, saying, sure, it's all about revenge, and added that there wasn't much he could do about it. That made him even angrier. He shouted that he'd make me pay and force me to give them the money, saying I regret ever speaking to him that way. Honestly, I'm not taking any of his threats seriously. He can try to intimidate me all he wants, but I know he's not capable of doing anything to me. I'm completely unbothered. Update 2. 3 days ago, my brother visited again and tried to convince me to help them, but he failed, just like my parents did when they tried. Since they couldn't get anywhere with me, my ex decided to call me herself. At first, I was unsure whether to answer, but I eventually picked up because I figured if I didn't, they might show up at my place again and waste more of my time. The conversation was ridiculous. It really showed how entitled and manipulative these people can be. She started off polite, saying that, as I already knew, she and the family were struggling financially. She admitted I had no reason to help them after what they'd put me through, but asked me to consider being the bigger person. She even tried to guilt-trip me by reminding me that my parents had paid for everything while I was growing up and that she had done her best to be a good wife. I couldn't believe the audacity. First, my parents never cared about me and always treated my brother as a favorite. Second, my ex cheated on me with the very same brother I used to complain about. So, yeah, her attempt to make me feel sorry for them didn't work. I told her I felt bad about their situation, but I was already spending a lot of unnecessary money paying her alimony, which she technically didn't even deserve. She cheated on me but managed to secure it because my family had no issue lying about me and painting me as a bad guy for their benefit. While I was on the call, she started crying and accused me of being selfish and heartless, which was ironic given everything they'd done to me. When I still refused to help, she told me my brother was right and that I'd left her no choice but to take legal action. She threatened to demand a higher alimony amount and dragged me to court again to humiliate me. Honestly, I'd love to see them try. The first time around, I was so emotionally drained and depressed that I didn't even bother fighting back or trying to prove their lies wrong. I just gave in, agreed to pay the alimony, and let them win because I wanted the divorce over with as soon as possible, no matter the financial cost. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I was ready to fight and teach them a lesson they'd never forget. In a surprising turn of events, my ex-wife followed through on her threats and actually filed for a higher alimony, arguing that my promotion made me capable of paying more. However, this time, I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. I reached out to our mutual friends and explained everything that had happened, including the real reason for our separation, as many of them didn't know the full story. They were shocked and agreed to testify on my behalf if needed. I also spoke to my lawyer and told them I wanted to challenge the alimony altogether because my ex didn't deserve a cent. Over the next few days, I gathered as much evidence as I could. I dug up proof of how my family and brother had mistreated me throughout my life, made me feel like an outsider, and were now trying to use me for money. I even convinced a few cousins who had witnessed this behavior while growing up to speak on my behalf. My lawyer was confident that our case was solid. It was already established that my ex cheated on me, but this time I could disprove the lies she and my family had used to justify their actions. They had painted me as toxic and controlling, while making my brother out to be some kind of hero who rescued her. When the case finally went to court, I presented everything I had, including video testimonials from friends and relatives. My family had nothing to say in their defense. They were clearly expecting me to just roll over like I had last time. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was stronger now, and I refused to let them manipulate me again. Yesterday, the case was finalized. The court ruled that I no longer had to pay my ex-wife alimony. The look on my ex-wife's face when the verdict was announced was priceless. She looked like she was about to cry. My family's smug attitude vanished in an instant. I was thrilled to finally put an end to their lies and manipulation. Afterward, I planned to treat myself to some good food and a movie. But of course, my family couldn't let me enjoy my moment. When I was only a few yards away from my house, I noticed my brother's car parked outside. Confused, I went in, only to find my entire family waiting at my door, blocking my way inside. I told them to leave immediately, warning them that I'd call the police if they didn't get off my property. That's when my dad started lecturing me. saying I should be ashamed of myself for what I'd done in court, and accusing me of betraying the family by refusing to help them when they needed me most. I stayed silent. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of getting a reaction out of me. I knew their goal was to provoke me into doing something stupid, but I wasn't going to fall for it. My silence seemed to anger them even more. My mom demanded that I show respect and speak to my dad, but I ignored her too. Their yelling continued, but I refused to engage. Finally, my brother snapped. He grabbed me by the collar and tried to hit me, but my dad pulled him back just in time. While struggling, my brother screamed that I was a jealous loser who would never amount to anything. Honestly, I couldn't help but laugh. It was pretty funny hearing that from an unemployed man who still lives with his parents and begs his brother for money to survive. I told them they needed to leave or I'd actually call the cops. I even pointed out that, since they were broke, they should probably hurry up and leave within the next 5 minutes. Begrudgingly, they left, but not before my mother made one last attempt to guilt-trip me into giving them money. It didn't work, and eventually they all left. It's been almost a day since that happened, and they haven't tried to contact me since. I truly hope it stays this way. Story 2. Found out my wife cheated on me with my stepdaughter's father. I, 33M, found out in December that my wife, 33F, was cheating on me. I walked in on her at his house because I had already suspected what was going on. The man she cheated with was none other than my stepdaughter's father. For years, I had been keeping him off our property and holding back my anger for the sake of peace. Meanwhile, I spent every day taking care of the house, the pets, the yard, and her daughter, 4F. When we got married, she made me donate my old car so I could drive one of hers. I even worked part-time at the law firm she was employed at. My day started at 6 a.m. and often didn't end until 2 a.m. because of all the chores and responsibilities I handled. Despite all of that, I tried to forgive her after discovering the affair. But she kept talking to him and even made plans to sleep with other male friends while telling me she wanted to work on things. She abused me emotionally and sexually, telling me that her cheating was my fault because I should have done something to stop it. She also used guilt and threats to force me into being intimate with her, even when I made it clear I wasn't ready. Things hit a breaking point when she got pregnant after I caught her with him. When I asked for a DNA test, she immediately got an abortion and blamed me for that too. I finally decided to leave last month. I quit my job and walked away from everything. Since then, my family has been supporting me because I'm struggling to even get out of bed and take care of myself. We were married for less than a year, and now I have nothing. No spousal support, no car, no job, and no money. I lost half of my family, her family, my stepdaughter, and my home. If it weren't for my family helping me, I'd be completely homeless right now. My mental health is in a really bad place. To make things worse, I recently found out that the cheating had been happening even when we were dating. It feels like everything was a lie or some kind of twisted game for her, and now I'm left to pick up the pieces of my life. I was cheated on, abused, and left to suffer all the consequences. I feel like I'm the only one being punished for what happened, even though I didn't do anything wrong. My lawyer, whom I trust deeply, he's a family friend, told me there's little I can do to change the situation legally. Now, I'm left with so much emotion that I don't know how to process. I know I need to take small steps, like finding a new job and rebuilding my life, but even leaving the house feels impossible right now. I'm struggling with severe depression and anxiety. Being in public is overwhelming, and even spending time with friends leaves me emotionally drained and sobbing by the time I get home. I feel broken, and no matter what I do, it doesn't seem to get better. I don't know how to move forward. My ex-wife is bringing her affair partner to our divorce hearing. A friend told me that my ex-wife plans to bring her affair partner, AP, to our divorce hearing. It feels like her final attempt to hurt me. Some friends have offered to come with me for support, while others say I should just ignore it. I don't know what to do, but I know I'll need to stay calm and focused. To summarize my story, My ex-wife cheated on me with her daughter's father. I caught her just days after Christmas last year. I tried to work things out, but she kept lying and sneaking around with him, and even made plans to meet other men. She would get inappropriate texts and Snapchats from them while assuring me she'd cut contact. Every time I caught her, she begged me to stay and promised to change, but it was always a lie. When I finally told her I was leaving and filing for divorce, she threatened to kill herself. But I stood my ground. I'm alive, and now she's permanently out of my life. After leaving, I lost nearly everything. My job, my car, my home, my stepdaughter, and my mental health. She even aborted her pregnancy when I asked for a DNA test, likely because it wasn't mine. This past year has been hell. She blamed me for everything, claiming I tore apart the family by leaving. But today, it's over. By the time she arrived at the courthouse, I was already speaking with my lawyer. We just needed the judge's signature to finalize the divorce. I never looked at her, not even when she tried to hand me mail from our old house. I simply took it and kept walking. Interestingly, AP wasn't with her, even though she'd been telling friends he would come. Everything went smoothly on the legal side. I felt emotional and stressed, but I kept a calm smile on my face throughout. She sounded like she was about to cry, but I didn't look at her once. When I got home, I went through the mail she gave me. Hidden inside was a note explaining why AP wasn't at the hearing. He got another woman pregnant. I tore up the note and threw it away. She had a loving husband, me, but chose to cheat, lie, and hurt me until I had no choice but to leave. And she did it all for a man who was seeing other women, got one of them pregnant, and doesn't even want to be a father. AP is lazy, abusive, and irresponsible. He used to beat my ex-wife when they were together and hardly spends any time with his daughter, instead leaving her with his own mother. I'll never forget how his mother cried with me one Christmas, saying she was grateful that I was a father figure to her granddaughter. It hurts to think about that little girl, knowing how much chaos this new baby will bring into AP's life. I just hope the woman having his child gets away from him for her and the baby's sake. Despite how far I've come, I feel very alone today. I'm bouncing between moments of happiness and deep sadness. I thought I'd feel better now that the divorce is finalized, but honestly, I wish none of us were suffering. It's strange I should feel relieved, but instead, I just feel empty.